And I'm going to invite Elizabeth Berney onto the line. Elizabeth?
Hi. How are you, Yisrael?
Okay, I'm fine. And good morning to you. We caught you just before leaving home, right?
That's right.
Oh, very good. I'm glad that you were able to come on. Let me tell the listeners all over the world that we came in contact through the Internet because I found out that, you are a political opponent of the sitting congressional representative of the 5th Congressional District in New York. He is a Democrat, Gary Ackerman. If I'm not mistaken, 12 terms.
13.
13 is an unlucky number for him. We know it because next time we're going to have someone else, probably you. And secondly, actually, from both sides of my family, myself, I actually come from Holliswood, and my wife comes from Great Neck, so we actually are in your congressional district.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful.
And if I can get registered back on the electoral list, I might be able to vote next time.
That's great.
First of all, why did you go into politics? What's a nice Jewish girl doing in politics?
Oh, believe me, I wonder about that myself. It actually never consciously crossed my mind to do this. I mean, I know a lot of people, from the time they're 5 years old, they plan their whole lives out, for a congressional run or for a political run. And I was just living, raising my kids. I'm a single parent. My children are now grown, and I have 2 new grandchildren.
Mazel tov, first of all, on that.
Working as an attorney, I've worked on some very famous cases, the Enron case representing the investors there, the Holocaust assets cases, a lot of consumer safety cases, such as the one involving the Firestone tires and Ford Explorer that was rolling over.
Sounds good.
And enjoyed music. I'm a violinist. I play with the klezmer group and some volunteer orchestras. I go into nursing homes. So this is my life, and I was enjoying it. And I then one day ran across a letter written by my congressman, Mr. Ackerman, together with an Arab congressman from Louisiana. It's known as the Ackerman-Bustani letter, and Ackerman is chair of the Mideast subcommittee, which is the most powerful position in Congress or at least in the House of Representatives regarding Israel. And he's a Jewish guy, and I thought that he would be pretty pro-Israel. And I literally almost fell off my chair when I read this letter, which was that we should send money to the Palestinian Authority, and the gist of the letter was, and that Abbas is a peace partner. I've followed events, or thought I had followed events in Israel pretty closely. I always cared a lot about Israel. I remember when I was in 6th grade, and I had heard that what turned out to be the 6-Day War broke out. The war had broken out in Israel. I was so upset that I walked into a wall. And always kept an eye on what was going on, and visited. I visited Israel 10 times, and really cared about. Always cared. It was always very important to me. And when I saw this, I was just beside myself. I know very well that Abbas is not a man of peace. This is the guy that financed the Munich Olympics massacre. He did his PhD in Holocaust studies. He's been constantly demanding the release of terrorists. And I know shortly before this letter was written, he had said that he wanted to join the PA and Hamas in the blood struggle against Israel.
And the reason why we basically came together is because of a recent declaration of his on the floor of the Congress, if I'm not mistaken, talking about settler pogroms, which set me off, and eventually I managed to find you because I think associatively, and so I went off and on until I found the fact that you were or are his political opponent. But why did you presume to join the Republican Party rather than perhaps fighting him within the Democratic? That's also an interesting aspect.
Well, I mean,
or have you always been a Republican? It's no great crime. I was also one.
I mean, I actually was an independent. I wasn't registered in either party for many years. I was sort of prided myself on being the type of person who likes to pick the best person from, regardless of party. And and I guess even prior to that, I had gone to some events and joined the Republican Jewish Coalition, and felt very comfortable with what they were doing. The Democratic Party, unfortunately, has moved further and further to the left and become more and more, and has more and more anti-Israel. I mean, I don't want to, there are a number of Democrats who are very pro-Israel in Congress, but there are also, there's a huge contingent who is not, and there seem to be a lot of very strong supporters of Israel on the Republican side, and on a number of issues, I agree with the Republicans, just sort of, being stronger about Iran, stronger foreign policy, stronger about the whole war on terror, and understanding of what America is up against in terms of Islamic terrorism, and that was not happening in the Democratic Party. I mean, also several personal experiences. I had gone to the AIPAC convention the first time that Obama spoke there, which was a year before his famous flip-flop on Jerusalem. And I don't know if you recall the remarks, but I was standing, probably less than 10 feet away from him when he started talking about the cycle of violence in the Middle East, which we all know is a code word for saying that Israel is just as much to blame as the Arabs who are constantly attacking Israel. And
actually, it's almost
Israel.
Justifying terror if they don't think properly when saying that. It could work the other way in a very negative sense too. But okay, yeah.
And he also, and Obama also was speaking about what was the word he used? Of cynicism. He was saying, well, the problem, the reason we don't have, basically he said, the reason we don't have peace in the Middle East is because you Jews are too cynical about the prospects of peace. You have to be hopeful. The problem is not Jewish cynicism. The Jews are usually not cynical enough about what's going on. The problem is that Israel constantly is attacked by terrorists and rocket attacks, and Arabs who want to wipe out the country.
So Liz, how do you go about running for office now? Give us a little bit of insight on the inside. What type of support do you have to pick up? What type of support are you looking for? How is it to make an outreach to the various communities that are represented in, if I'm not mistaken, what's called Northeast Queens and Northwest Nassau?
That's right. Let me mention there were a couple of other issues too that also can I.
Sure, you can.
To your prior question, there were a couple of other issues that also came up in quick succession after I read the Ackerman Bustani letter.
Okay, go ahead.
Which so shocked me, and I realized that he was just off base on a lot of other issues. One of them was that he had voted against honoring there are these congressional resolutions to honor holidays, and he had several times voted against honoring Christmas after voting to honor Ramadan. And I didn't understand that. And I thought that was, that was really offensive to the many Christians in our community and the country. The resolution was also the Christmas resolution was also intended to show support for Christians around the world who have suffered discrimination. And as I'm sure a lot of your listeners know, the Christian Copts in Egypt have been, several times massacred by extremist Muslims there. So it is important to show solidarity, with Christians in those situations. And he voted against that, but voted to honor Ramadan. And I thought that was also very offensive. And getting back to my background in the safety area, at the time I was working on the Mattel toy safety case, which involved the importation of lead toys into the United States, and several about 60 congressmen and women got very involved in this issue and wrote letters to Mattel and so on, and Ackerman was nowhere to be found. And I said, what is it with this guy? He's bashing, he wants to send money to Israel's enemies, and he doesn't care about, poison, toys that can poison American children. I mean, it was, so there were, I was just so outraged by a whole series of issues.
Is this an indication? Let me jump in here. Is this an indication that perhaps he's been in Congress simply a little bit too long? It happens sometimes. You're there and you sort of take things for granted and do things, or maybe he just doesn't have a very good advisory staff, or I mean, it's a little bit odd. I mean, if you're a social democrat or a radical Republican or a liberal whatever it is, you go all the way that way. Why do things that don't seem rational?
A lot of people ask me that, like, what is he thinking? What frankly, I don't understand it. I think he has, several pro-Israel advocates and people who have lobbied on the Hill before him have said he's very hostile. People who have testified before his congressional hearing. By the way, he made those remarks about Israelis perpetrating pogroms and Israeli intransigence at a congressional hearing on the Middle East as the chair of the Middle East subcommittee.
That's like being on 42nd Street and Broadway, basically, in New York.
And but I know people who've testified before his committee who have said he was extremely hostile to them. People who are pro-Israel, and it's. I don't know. I'm often at a loss, especially when a Jewish person it does things which are adverse to Israel. I find it very upsetting and difficult to understand.